In today's Locked On Pelicans, I'll tell you why the Pels' 124-106 loss to the Warriors is the game that makes me think New Orleans needs to fire head coach Willie Green. It's an angry cast episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Here with y'all on this Wednesday, day after the Pelicans lose 106 to 124 to the Golden State Warriors. And look, there's no getting around this one. This was a just pathetic display by the New Orleans Pelicans. It were 4 games in, and it shouldn't feel like this much of a disaster here. So we're going to break it down. This is an angry cast. This was a bad loss, and I honestly think the Pelicans might need to fire head coach Willie Green after this game, or right around now, maybe not directly after this game. And I'll explain why in today's show. We'll also look at some reasons for patience, and then a couple of good performances, bright spots from this game. And hopefully they can turn it around really quickly because they play the same team tonight, tomorrow night, depending on when you're listening to this. So we're going to break it all down in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Don't forget, Locked On Pelicans has a newsletter. Introducing the Locked On Pelicans daily newsletter, one-stop shop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at lockedondaily.com. You're not going to want to miss tomorrow's edition. That's lockedondaily.com, and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Pelicans newsletter here. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this team. We're going to get into it today. This is not going to be an episode you want to miss. You can probably hear I'm a little fired up. It's after midnight when I'm recording this, and I am ready to go when it comes to this one. Today's episode is sponsored by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. So yeah, what the heck was that? This is the game I think that's got me for sure on the Pelicans need to fire head coach Willie Green train. Look, it doesn't have to be firing head coach Willie Green. They need a change. Something has to be different. And yes, there are injuries, whatever. The display you saw from this team outside of the first quarter, but even in that first quarter, means things have to change. And the easiest thing to do that is by moving on from the head coach. The Pelicans won the first quarter. In the first half of this game, they were up by 20 and they lost by 18. That's a near 40-point swing from that point on. The Pelicans ended the first quarter on a 13-0 run and lost by 18. Think about that one for a second. The second quarter was rough. And that's when you looked at this and go, oh, there's a problem here. Entirely stagnant offense in the second quarter. No one moved. No one really did anything other than take tough, contested mid-range threes. If you look at the shot charts for this game for the Pelicans and the Warriors, you can just look at it and go, oh, I can tell you which team won and which team lost. You can do it just from which team took shots in which locations. So it comes down to three-point shooting. This is important in 2024. I'm going to sneeze here, so I apologize for that here. The Pelicans took 22 threes. The Golden State Warriors made 21 threes. They almost made as many as the Pelicans took. They took 46. In yesterday's show for the everydayers, I said, you can't take this team lightly. This is a team without Steph Curry, without Andrew Wiggins, arguably their best player, arguably their second best player, at least second best offensive player, and you lost by 18 for a team with Zion Williamson, Brandon Ingram, and CJ McCollum. That is absolutely inexcusable. Lose by 2 points, different story. 18, absolutely not. They were pathetic out there, and it came down to three-point shooting. 21 of 46 for the Warriors, 9 of 22 for the Pelicans. They actually made their threes. 41% is really good, but they just stopped taking them. In the second half in particular, that team wasn't even trying to do anything offensively other than turn the ball over. What are we doing here? Head coach Willie Green, the front office, has said the goal is 43s per game. 43s per game. You took 22. Willie Green might want them to take 43s per game, but if they're not going to do that, you've got to make it happen, right? Wanting them to take threes is not a strategy. You need to find a way to take threes. And it's summed up, I think, with the Jordan Hawkins stat line. He was 0 for 6. So you probably think, oh, he went 0 for 6 from 3. Jordan Hawkins took 1 3-point attempt. In a game where you're not taking threes, why are you not running plays for him in the second quarter, in the second half of the game to just generate some 3-point attempts? Why are you not doing that? Now, a lot of this is on the players not listening, not doing what you tell them to do. Look, Zion took 2 threes. Ingram took 6. That's not bad. But why are you not manufacturing more shots? We'll get into the injuries, particularly Dejounte Murray coming up a little bit later in the show. But why are you not taking more threes? You can't force the players to do it, but you can run plays. You can call plays out of timeouts. You saw them call a timeout and immediately came out and Zion just dribbled the ball and no one did anything. Look, Willie Green probably called the play. I'm not going to say he didn't, but it makes you wonder if he did, right? That's what we're faced with here. They're clearly not listening to the head coach or doing what he wants. And while that might be a lot on the players, and I think it is, you can't trade the whole team right now or reshape your roster in this moment. We've talked about this a lot when it comes down to kind of triaging a season, and it's early. It's 2-2. We'll get into reasons for, patience in a moment as well. They're 2-2. The sky isn't fully falling, but it doesn't look great because these issues the team seems to have seem to run deep here. So the easiest thing you can do is not trade Zion, not trade BI or any of that. It's fire the head coach and install someone else, whether it's James Borrego or somebody else. It sounds like you need a new voice trying to get through to these guys to get them to do what you want. This loss is inexcusable. And I told you it could happen in yesterday's show. This is why you need to listen to Locked On Pelicans. The Warriors were going to take threes even without Steph Curry. And I said, if the Pelicans don't, they could run into trouble here. It becomes a math thing, right? The Pelicans made 6 fewer shots than the Golden State Warriors did. 6 fewer. That's a reasonable number there. They took 11 more free throws than the Warriors did. That should balance it out. And you lost by 18. The difference comes down to 2 areas. And the main culprit is the 3-point shooting. 9 makes for the Pelicans, 21 for the Golden State Warriors. You're going to lose every time if that's the case. That's a difference of 36 points. You lost the 3-point battle by 36 points. That's double what the loss in the game was. If you take a couple more threes, you can get right back into this one. Now, the other area was the turnovers. That was a big problem for New Orleans in this one. A massive problem for the Pelicans in this one. Where did the turnover numbers just go? 23 turnovers for New Orleans compared to 7 for the Golden State Warriors. When nobody's moving, when nobody's running around, when everyone's just standing around and everyone's just dribbling the heck out of the ball, yeah, you're easier to defend, and that means you're going to turn the ball over. And those 23 turnovers turned into 34 points off of turnovers for New Orleans. That's also the game right there. Maybe if you move more, have more of an offensive game plan or whatever it is, you can avoid something like this. But guys weren't threats. It allowed them to just turn the ball over in stupid ways. The Warriors defense was not incredible in this game. They were kind of breathing on the Pelicans and they were turning it over because no one was making it difficult for the Warriors. They could defend one-on-one pretty easily here. And New Orleans turned the ball over because they were just stagnant. It's a problem. They've got to change something here. Otherwise, this season is going to be in for some trouble. Now, there's reasons to believe they can make adjustments. There's reasons to believe that they can change. I want to get into some things for when it comes to patience and also look a little bit at some of the injuries that they're going through and how that might impact this team. Let's get into that coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. But let me know in the comments down below, is it time to fire head coach Willie Green? Keep in mind, you're not going to trade Zion or BI right now. If you got to do something, is it fire head coach Willie Green? Let me know in the comments down below. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by my go-to ticketing app, Game Time. Look, going to live sporting events is just fun. No matter what, I just like being in the Smoothie King Center watching good basketball. If you want to do that, Game Time can make it even easier for you. Whether it's concerts, comedy, theater, sporting events, whatever it is, Game Time is my go-to ticketing app because of all the features that they have. And Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks, and that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out all that fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. So those curated deals make it easier to find the best price on great seats. And you're going to know they're great seats because they have a panoramic view from the seats before you buy. So if you're going to a venue that you're unfamiliar with, you're going to get you're going to know exactly what you're buying. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. And I toggle the all-in pricing. I don't want surprise fees at checkout or anything like that. If you toggle the all-in pricing up front, you're going to see the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. And now Locked On Pelicans has a newsletter. We've got the daily Locked On Pelicans newsletter. Get Pelicans news from me right to your inbox every single day. Also, though, included in there is fantasy basketball advice from the GOAT, Josh Lloyd of Locked On Fantasy Basketball. We have a couple of great national NBA writers that are going to give you insight to the league at large. And then there's links for other Pelicans content that you need to read. So please subscribe to the Locked On Pelicans daily free newsletter over at lockedondaily.com. All right, let's keep talking about this 120, what was it, 124, 106 loss? That's what it was to the New Orleans Pelicans. It doesn't matter what the numbers were. The Pelicans looked terrible, and they need to make a change. So there are valid reasons or excuses for why they're struggling right now. And I do think they're valid, but I'm going to put those out there for you so you can understand a little bit. But then I'm going to shoot these down a little bit too, because I think they're valid. But I have an issue with some of that here. So the first and foremost one is they're missing Dejounte Murray. We knew this team needed a point guard to organize this team. We saw that last year. They're running kind of the same players right now, other than Yves Missi. We'll get to him, Zion, Ingram, and CJ in the next segment here, along with potential injuries, more injuries too, which is not great. So they traded for Dejounte Murray, gave up some depth in Dyson Daniels and Larry Nance Jr. to bring him in, and then spent all of training camp having him run the offense, and then same with preseason, and then he goes down with a broken hand, and now he's going to miss 6 to 8 weeks, whatever the time frame is, and it's probably going to be longer than that. So yeah, they're going to look a little bit like disarray, right? And but here's the thing with that. I think that's valid. I think missing Trey Murphy as a 3-point shooter is really hurting this team, very obviously. But here's the thing. If you're not going to, missing those guys, yes, matters. But if you're not going to run plays for Jordan Hawkins, if you're going to have Zion stand around and do nothing, when he doesn't have the ball, that's going to be a problem. Those are excuses. And while I think some of them are valid concerns, there's still no reason you should lose to a Steph Curry-less Warriors team. I really think it's as simple as that. Did you utilize Zion particularly well in this game? He scored. I wouldn't say you did. At least he looked like himself. But there's ways you can manufacture 43-point attempts, and they didn't do it. It's not about the players out there. They're just not doing what they should be. And to me, that's the most damning thing you can say about this team. When you realize they're turning the ball over a ton, do something about it. You're the head coach. And if they're not going to listen to you, and they're clearly not, you've got to try and do something, and they weren't able to do it in this game. Look, there's limitations to the roster. Daniel Tice isn't particularly great, though I thought he played okay in this game. You have injuries to Murray, to Trey, now maybe Jose Alvarado, but do something. Right? You have Zion Williamson, you have Brandon Ingram, you have CJ McCollum, and they're not being utilized properly. Maybe they don't all fit together, but they shouldn't look this bad. You shouldn't barely score, get barely over 100 points here. If you added Murray to this team in this game, what would that have changed? Would that have made them take 43s? And I don't think the answer is yes. So your stated goal, which you haven't hit at all this season, and I think 40 might be a stretch when you have a high usage guy in Zion that doesn't take threes, though he took 2 in this game and that was good. You've got to figure it out another way. And that's not so much the players, that's on the coaching. And that's what you're really failing to see here. This team came out in the first quarter and actually looked pretty good. That 20-point lead was somewhat of a fluke in my opinion, but at least they played with that sense of urgency that we said they needed in yesterday's show. But they couldn't keep it up for the whole game. Why not? Why does this team, whenever things start to go slightly wrong for them, really just feels like they crumble and they don't have that ability to withstand adversity? And that's why you saw them not come back in the fourth quarter last season. And they're lucky they were able to do it on Friday night against the Portland Trail Blazers. But they're missing something here. And maybe that is on the players too, and I think it is. I think, it's not an either or thing. These things aren't mutually exclusive. There's enough blame to go around for everybody, and we don't even need to assign it. You're just all in the blame pool here. But you can't trade everyone. So you've got to make a change with the head coach, or the head coach needs to do something differently. And I don't think it's as simple as play other guys. You're going to lose games. Talent's what wins you games. And Jose Alvarado's not been playing well this year. So playing him more, I don't think is necessarily going to be the answer or fix anything. Maybe it sends a message to your starters. There's reasons to go and do something like that. I agree with that, certainly, to send a message to them. Look, I'm a big AC Milan fan. They've been benching their star player for a minute to try and send a message to him. We'll see if it works. Not always great there, but you could try something like that, but you're going to lose games in a season where you need to win, and this isn't like a growing pain sort of season. So what would Dejounte Murray have done here, right? Would he have created more off-ball movement? Yeah, probably. Could he have organized the offense better? Yeah. But if those guys are going to do it when he's on the court, they can probably also do that when he's not. And why are they not? And that's the big question here. And I don't necessarily have an answer to that. That's, I think, part of the mystery about this. Is that head coaching? Is that the players? Is that just him barking at the guys when he's out there on the court? Well, then Willie Green needs to bark at these guys when they're on the court. He needs to be calling plays and make sure they're running them. Those are the type of things that we need to look at right here when it comes to all of this. You get into this game, and there's no way they were going to win. No way they were going to win with whatever this was. When you look at the shooting frequency, and I'm pulling this from Cleaning the Glass, the Golden State Warriors took more shots at the rim than the New Orleans Pelicans did. They took more threes than the New Orleans Pelicans did. In what world are you going to win a basketball game? Shots at the rim, New Orleans went 11 for 19. The Golden State Warriors were 18 for 28. 9 more shots at the rim. The Pelicans outshot them in short mid-range, 25 shots there. That's not great. Long mid-range, they outshot them 8-5 in terms of attempts. When you just look at all mid-range, New Orleans was 20 for 33 compared to the Warriors, who were 7 for 23. If you look around the league, you go, wait, 20 for 33, what's the shooting percentage on that? Let me do a calculator, because math is not my strong suit here. That's 60%. That's a really great number. Doesn't matter, does it? Does not matter, does it? From 3, the Warriors were 21 for 44. The Pelicans were 9 for 22. Let me get into the shooting context here for you a little bit more to tell you why 60% sounds good, 61% if we're rounding up, still isn't. From all mid-range in terms of accuracy from the league this season, that's a 40.8, so 41% shot. The rim is 64.2. All mid-range is 40.8. And all threes are 36.4. So 3-point percentage, league average. So all the teams, all the shots, this is what we're looking at here, is less than 4% below the mid-range, but it's worth a point more. And then you see the shot attempts at the rim, and that you've got to play those percentages, and the Pelicans aren't. They need to cut that shot and most of those shots out of their diet. Some of those, yes. But in that first quarter, and I tweeted this out right after it ended, they ended on a 13-0 run. We were feeling great. They had the energy there. Some of that was not necessarily smoke and mirrors, but it was more just them making tough shots that when you look at the percentages, you're not going to shoot 60% from there all game long or over the course of a season. That number will regress to the mean and get worse, and then you're going to lose those games. And in this one, you saw New Orleans trading twos for threes, but not even efficient twos because they weren't getting to the rim. You're going to lose that game. And they did. And that's why the more talented team here didn't win the basketball game. That's a problem. And we've seen this through the first 4 games. They're not doing what they need to do. They do not look like an offensive team in 2024. The defensive issues, I think, are there because they're missing Murray, and then they missed Herb Jones in this game, and that'll get sorted out, though Zion's defense in this was particularly bad. That can get fixed, and we've seen that be a hallmark under Willie Green, but there has been no growth offensively right now. And I don't think adding Murray into that was going to really fix things, and that's a real big problem here. And that's why something has to change. What that something is likely should be the head coach, but it could be something else too. Maybe it's just the players deciding to do what they need to do and kind of pulling their heads out of their butts, which is what it kind of feels like a little bit. I don't truthfully know, and that's why we're going to need to find out here. It's pretty rough. This was a rough game. There's no getting around that. There's reasons for patience here. I don't think they're going to find Coach Willie Green by the time I wake up in the morning on a back-to-back. You have a 4-game homestand coming up that maybe lets them kind of figure it out. Having 1 game at home, then going immediately 4 on the road is kind of rough, especially losing Dejounte Murray. Now you maybe get a couple of practices in, can figure it out a little bit. We'll see if they turn it around, but if that homestand doesn't go well, trust me, you're going to be hearing me screaming. Look, I did a little bit of hedging my bets here in the open. This is the game that makes me think New Orleans might need to move on from their head coach, right? Like, I'm not saying they should do it because I don't know if they should do it just yet, though I'm leaning that way. If they struggle in that 4-game homestand, yeah, I'm going to be heavily in that camp. It didn't look great in this one. And when you look at the problems that are happening here, they're problems from last season, and they're problems that seem to run pretty deep. It might just take a new voice, or it might be something that you need to try. Let me know what you think in the comments down below on YouTube. But this one was not pretty for so many reasons. Let's get into a couple highlights. Zion Williamson, Eve Misi too. I want to get into that coming up here next. We're going to end on a positive note in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join over 10,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. And now for your second listen, Locked On Saints, Ross Jackson. Maybe everyone in New Orleans needs to fire their head coach. Probably won't happen exactly like that. Maybe they should. Ross Jackson making sense of everything black and gold over at the Locked On Saints podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Make them your second listen today. And don't forget the Locked On Pelicans newsletter. You can sign up over at LockedOnDaily.com. You scroll down, click on the Locked On Pelicans logo. It'll send it to you. I've tweeted it out as well. Please subscribe. It's pretty cool that we're doing this. It's a great way to support the show just by getting the email and opening it every single day. Whether you read it or not, that supports me. That helps the show. So if you want to, look, I don't charge for comments or anything. I'm not trying to take your money and nickel and dime you or anything like that. But if you want to support the show by listening, by subscribing, or in any other way, if there's something you want to do that's above and beyond, it's rate the podcast 5 stars wherever you get your podcasts and subscribe to the newsletter and comment down below on YouTube. The people who just say comment every day, ABJ504, shout out to the OG here. When it comes to it and the others, I see y'all, even if I'm not commenting every single day down there. That makes a difference, and I greatly, greatly appreciate it. And if you're a new listener, I appreciate you just tuning in, particularly after a loss like this. Your time's valuable. I appreciate you coming to Locked On Pelicans and making us part of your day and hopefully part of your daily routine as well. So I realized as I'm talking and doing this live, and this show feels a little bit more disjointed than they normally are for me because, well, like, this was pretty bad in the way that they lost. We went from like the angry cast and then kind of switched to like a disappointed cast. Like, I'm not even angry. I'm just disappointed here. And that was kind of what it's felt like a little bit here. So that was kind of fun. But they've got to do something. They've got to change this. And it has to start with the 3-point shooting and 3-point volume if you want to try and win in today's NBA. Let me look at the shooting, the summary here when it comes to threes and everything where the Pelicans are in the league. We can see all of this, right? Like, this isn't something that's being hidden here. Frequency, all threes, where do the Pelicans rank? After this game, they are third worst in the league. Third worst in the league. Boston is taking over 50% of their shots from three. Minnesota is taking 45.7. The Warriors were, I forget what it was, but they're taking 45.5 of their shots from three. New Orleans is at 30.6. You're just not going to win. You're not going to win. Manufacture those shots. That's on head coach Willie Green to do that. Drop plays every single time. You can't really do that in the NBA, but you're going to need to find a way when it comes to that, because this isn't how you're going to win games. There were some bright spots in this game, though, and so let's try and end a little bit on a positive note. It was nice to see Zion Williamson get back to himself, in a sense. 31 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists. He was 12 of 19 from the field, 6 of 8 from the free throw line, and 1 of 2 from 3. It ended up being in a loss. He was part of it, particularly his defense. He was a minus 14. That's second worst on the team in this game. But it was nice to see him just look like himself. And that's at least something this team can try and build off of a little bit. That's going to draw in defenders. It's going to leave guys open for three. You saw it in the first quarter. Zion started to drive, kicked it out to Brandon Ingram, who took a three. That was great. Ingram paced them in that first quarter, and it was with 2 made threes. He had 10 points in the first quarter. 6 of them were from three. That's a really good thing. You saw a little 2-man game there, and then they went away from it for whatever reason. Zion's going to draw in defenders when he's scoring like that. Look, Draymond Green is one of the better defenders in the league. He's particularly good at not letting you do what you want to do. That guy devours film, knows the tendencies of the guys that he's guarding. He knows Zion Williamson's spots, knows that Zion Williamson wants to go left, and couldn't stop him. Couldn't stop him from getting to his spots, going to his left. The fact that Zion was doing that to Draymond Green is particularly impressive, truthfully. That's why you look at Zion and you're like, oh, we can, potentially build around him with everything. So that's an encouraging sign, was the way that he was scoring. Look, you saw it with Brandon Ingram at times too. 12 of 17, 3 of 6. That's what you want to see from him. When he was driving and kicking, he looked particularly good. And he was doing that, and the Pelicans weren't always making their shots. They need more of that along with everything else. And it's definitely not consistent enough to be working, but at least you see the potential there. That's what makes this so frustrating, so maddening, I think, in a sense that, like, you see it. You see the potential. And they're just not doing this. It goes back to something that I was saying last season. It was, we kept waiting, and I kept saying it. When the Pelicans reach their full potential, they're going to be a scary good team. And then we realized maybe they're not going to do that. Maybe it's an if they reach their full potential, they're a scary good team. And that switch from when to if is pretty significant and says a lot. They need someone that makes them a when they reach their full potential, not if they reach their full potential. I think that's probably the head coach. We'll see how this game tonight again goes against the Golden State Warriors. No Steph Curry. No excuses. If they play remotely like they did in this game, which I don't expect them to do, you definitely need to make a pretty significant change. If you come out and completely do things differently, cool. You now need to keep it up for 4 games on the homestand. We'll find out what they're capable of. We're going to be right back at it. Little sleep here over at the Locked On Pelicans studios when it comes to it. So I appreciate y'all listening. We'll be back again tomorrow with all this. Oh, man, I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe another Anchorcast. Maybe we're going to be happy, and we're going to say you got to keep doing that. But we'll find out in tomorrow's game. Same team, back-to-back against the Golden State Warriors. Drink your coffee at 8 p.m. for a 9 p.m. tip-off, and you'll be energized like I am right now. So as always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NolaJake on Twitter. Let me know what you think about head coach Willie Green, and I'll be back with y'all tomorrow. This is the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.